My wife cheated with her coworker while I worked double shifts to pay our bills, so I took everything and walked away, while she begged pathetically I'm a 29-year-old guy. And for the last 2 years, I've basically lived at work. That's not an exaggeration, it feels like the walls of the warehouse know me better than my own wife does. Every shift blends into the next. Double shifts, triple shifts, overtime, call-ins. I said yes to everything because rent was rising, groceries were expensive, and Jenna kept saying she needed time to figure out her career path. I kept telling myself I was doing what any good husband would do: provide, protect, carry the weight, so she wouldn't have to most nights. I'd get home around 2 a.m., shoulders aching, feet numb, sweat still clinging to my clothes. The apartment would be dark, except for the glow of the TV Jenna left on. I'd reheat whatever leftovers were in the fridge, usually something I cooked days before, then crash for 4 or 5 hours before heading right back out. Sometimes I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering how long I could keep going without collapsing. Jenna, meanwhile, stayed sweet on the surface, always smiling at guests, always posting relationship appreciation stories online, always telling her friends how proud she was of me. But behind closed doors, she was distant, detached, always on her phone with the brightness turned down, lying on the couch with her back facing me. Whenever I'd ask how her day was or whether she'd put in job applications, she'd brush me off with a tired laugh or a quick change of topic. I tried not to take it personally. People drift sometimes, right? Maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was overwhelmed. But the more I watched her, the more I realized she wasn't overwhelmed, she was distracted. One night, as I walked past the living room, I saw her smiling at her phone, fingers typing fast. When she noticed me, she locked the screen so quickly it echoed in my head long after I walked away. Then she chuckled and said, "Maybe you should work even more hours. You're good at it." Something in her tone felt wrong, and the way her phone lit up again right after felt even worse. I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions. I've always believed that trust is the backbone of a marriage, and I held on to that belief even when it started to hurt. But over the next few weeks, the little things began stacking up in ways I couldn't ignore. Jenna started dressing up more for work makeup, curled hair, new perfume I didn't recognize. She said her office had more client interactions. Now, but I'd never heard of any clients, needing floral dresses and lipstick at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. She also started mentioning new names, people she'd never talked about before. One name in particular stuck out: Evan. Every time she said it, her voice softened a little too much, like she couldn't help it. I'd ask casually, "Who's Evan?" And she'd shrugged, saying, "Just a funny guy from the office. He makes work bearable." The way she said it made a knot form in my chest. Still, I tried to brush it off. I didn't want to be the insecure husband. I didn't want to accuse her of anything without proof. I kept telling myself I was tired, overworked, imagining things. But then she started guarding her phone like her life depended on it. Screen always face down. Notifications turned off. If I walked into the room while she was scrolling, she'd lock it instantly, like it was muscle memory. And the worst part, she stopped letting me pick her up from work. Every time I offered, she'd say, "Don't bother. I'm staying late," or "We've all been carpooling," with a classic, "You need to rest, babe." One night, half asleep on the couch, I heard her whispering into her phone in the hallway. Her voice was soft, almost giggly something I hadn't heard from her in months. When she noticed me sitting up, she flinched like I'd caught her doing something illegal. "I was just talking to a coworker," she said quickly. "You're imagining things." But I wasn't imagining the way her hand shook when she put her phone down, and I definitely wasn't imagining how the distance between us was growing, inch by inch, every single day. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting. After all, I'd been running on no sleep for weeks, living off energy drinks and leftover takeout. But the signs kept piling up, like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to complete. Every extra hour I worked seemed to give Jenna more freedom, more space, more excuses. Friends started asking why I never saw her anymore. "She's always at work," they'd ask, or just busy with friends. I forced a laugh, but inside something was twisting. Every Wednesday she'd work late, but she'd leave the apartment unusually cheerful. Hair freshly styled, and with that soft, lingering smile. On Fridays, her phone would buzz constantly, and she'd take it to the bedroom. Always alone. always whispering. I felt like an outsider in my own home. The woman I married was there physically, but emotionally. She was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. Her excuses began to sound rehearsed. Office deadlines, mandatory team events, catching up with Evan from work. The last one made my chest tighten every time. I tried denying it to myself, tried to ignore the way my stomach dropped when I heard his name. Maybe it was innocent, I told myself. Maybe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being replaced not physically, but in every way that mattered. Then one evening, I walked past the living room while she was on the couch. She had her back to me, phone in hand, and a laugh escaped her lips that wasn't for me. My gut froze. I leaned closer, pretending to stretch my shoulders, and caught a glimpse of the message on her screen. Something flirty, something intimate, something not meant for my eyes. She noticed me at the last second, and the screen went black, almost like it had burned itself clean. I had just got a funny text from a friend, she mumbled. Too quickly, too nervously. I wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something told me the storm was only just starting, and I wasn't ready for it. I just swallowed the knot in my throat and nodded, pretending everything was normal. But deep down, I knew it wasn't normal. Not anymore. I had always told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe stress was making me see things that weren't there. But then the truth started hitting me in small, undeniable pieces. A coworker at my night shift pulled me aside one evening, lowering his voice like he didn't want anyone else to hear. "Man, have you noticed Jenna and Evan lately? People have been talking." My stomach dropped before he even finished the sentence. People had been noticing. People had been whispering. I tried to push it out of my mind. "It's probably nothing," I whispered to myself on the drive home, gripping the wheel like my hands could hold the world together. But my mind wouldn't let it go. That night, I decided to adjust my schedule secretly, working a different set of hours so I could catch a glimpse of her life when she thought I was still gone. And that's when the shock hit me. I went to bring her lunch, a simple gesture I'd done countless times over the past 2 years. She wasn't at her desk. Her car wasn't in the lot. The office receptionist looked at me awkwardly. "She left early today," she said, and I noticed her smile faltered when I asked why. My heart started hammering in a way it hadn't in years. Then the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't recent. This had been going on for months. Days when she worked late were often days she left early with him. Lunch breaks, client meetings, everything carefully orchestrated. And the messages, the phone whispers, the late-night texts, they weren't just random flirtations. They were part of a pattern, a hidden world I wasn't allowed to see. I pulled into the parking lot across the street, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I didn't know what I expected to feel: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But all I could do was sit there and watch. Watch as the life I thought I knew slowly slipped through my fingers. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't imagining things anymore. I wasn't paranoid. I was being lied to completely. After that night, something inside me shifted. The disbelief and numbness gave way to a quiet, simmering determination. I knew I needed proof, solid, undeniable proof, before confronting Jenna or letting my emotions run wild. Every instinct told me to act carefully, to plan, and not give away the slightest hint that I suspected anything. For the first time in months, I felt a strange clarity amid the chaos of betrayal. I started documenting everything: bank statements with unusual charges, screenshots of her social media activity, subtle comments she made that didn't match her story. Every late night, she claimed to be at work. Every suspicious smile or laugh I caught through the window, everything went into my mental ledger. It became almost mechanical, like I was assembling a puzzle one piece at a time, preparing for the day the picture would finally make sense. One night, after a 14-hour shift, I found myself sitting in the car outside her apartment. The glow from her bedroom window revealed her curled up on the couch, phone in hand, whispering, laughing softly. I resisted the urge to walk in, to confront, to yell. Instead, I quietly noted the time, the posture, the expressions on her face. Every detail counted. Later, back in our apartment, I noticed a message flashed on her phone while she thought I was asleep. "He's working late again. Come over?" My chest sank, the familiar knot tightening in my stomach. That was the confirmation I had feared and needed all at once. It wasn't just a fleeting flirtation or harmless banter. She had arranged meetings, moments, and secret encounters while I was exhausting myself to keep our lives afloat. I felt sick, angry, heartbroken. But there was also a small, dark spark of control rising inside me. I could finally see clearly, finally understand what I was up against. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. I wasn't just a victim of her lies. I could take action carefully, decisively, yet even as I sat there, plotting quietly, the thought gnawed at me. How far had this betrayal gone? And how much more had I been blind to all along? I don't even remember the last time I felt like myself. That night, I sat in my car for what felt like hours after my shift, staring blankly at the city lights. The hum of traffic around me blurred into nothing. I was exhausted, but it wasn't physical exhaustion this time, which the kind that eats at your soul, a deep, hollow ache that leaves you numb. Every sacrifice I'd made, every extra hour, every penny I'd worked for, felt like it had been poured into a void. When I finally trudged into our apartment, the sight of Jenna laughing on her phone stopped me cold. My stomach twisted painfully. She was animated, carefree, oblivious to the world I'd been drowning in just to keep us afloat. She noticed me staring and rolled her eyes. "You're home early," she asked, smiling. But there was no warmth in that smile, no acknowledgement of the life we'd built together, or at least, the one I thought we had. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand answers. Instead, I collapsed on the couch, hiding my face in my hands. The apartment smelled faintly of her perfume, mixed with the scent of the takeout I'd picked up earlier. It was a cruel reminder that this life, the home I thought I was building with her, wasn't real. Every effort, every sleepless night, every missed meal and skipped moment for myself had been invisible to the person I trusted most. Then she muttered something that will haunt me forever. "If you made more money, maybe I wouldn't be so bored." That sentence, it shattered me. I felt my chest tighten, my heart pounding as tears blurred my vision. Rage and despair collided, leaving me shaken, powerless. I wanted to throw something, break everything around me, just to feel something other than this crushing emptiness. But I didn't. I couldn't. I had never felt so utterly alone, so betrayed, so small dot. And yet, even in that low, crushing moment, a tiny flicker of something else emerged. A dark, quiet thought whispered through the pain. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. Something inside me snapped that night, not in anger, not in despair, but in clarity. I realized I had been living on autopilot, allowing her lies to shape my reality while I carried everything alone. The tears and exhaustion were still there, but beneath them burned a cold, quiet determination. I refused to be her victim anymore. I started planning cautiously. I met with a lawyer under the pretense of general financial advice, asking questions I'd never dared to ask before. How could I protect my assets? What were my rights? I learned the apartment lease, most of the bills, and even several savings accounts were legally under my name, not hers. The sense of control was intoxicating, and for the first time in months, I felt like I had an edge. Back home, I acted as if nothing had changed. I smiled, carried on, even joked with her about my crazy work hours. She didn't suspect a thing. Every late-night text, every secretive laugh, let it roll off me, pretending oblivion. But behind that calm exterior, I was methodically preparing. Every bank statement, every utility, every possession was being noted, recorded, accounted for. For the first time, I wasn't the exhausted, betrayed husband. I was someone who could act decisively. I had a plan, a path forward, and she had no idea that the life she thought she controlled was about to crumble around her. And yet, even as I plotted quietly, there was a pulse of fear. Could I really follow through? Was I ready to confront the full extent of her betrayal? I didn't answer these questions. I didn't need to yet. The game had just changed. I decided I couldn't rely on suspicion anymore. I needed irrefutable proof. One day off, I followed her under the guise of errands. I watched from a distance as she didn't head to the office. Instead, she drove straight to Evan's apartment. I sat frozen in my car, heart hammering, stomach twisting into knots. They hugged, and then he kissed her. My chest felt like it had been crushed by a freight train. I didn't call, didn't confront, didn't text. I didn't want her to see me break. I snapped pictures discreetly, timestamps included. Every laugh, every intimate glance, every moment she thought I wasn't watching was captured. And I realized the depth of the deception. Months of lies, of late nights working, of her feigned exhaustion, all while I struggled to keep our lives together. I placed her phone face down and pretended to be asleep. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee she'd brewed, and I realized every comforting routine we had shared had been a lie, a cover for her hidden life. I sat there in the darkness, feeling rage, grief, and a strange satisfaction that the truth was finally in my hands. I didn't act immediately. I waited, calculated. While she spent nights working late, I quietly moved valuables, personal documents, and money into secure storage. Bank transfers, legal account setups, everything was under my control. I spoke with the landlord, arranging to remove her from the lease without a confrontation. Every action was silent, invisible to her. I walked around the apartment, pretending exhaustion, smiling when she mentioned errands or work. She had no idea that the world she thought she controlled, the apartment, the money, even her daily routines, was slipping from her grasp. It felt almost surreal to be planning her downfall, quietly while she remained oblivious. Laughing at the TV, scrolling on her phone, a small, dark satisfaction settled over me. Finally, I had the upper hand. And for the first time in months, I wasn't terrified of what she might be hiding. I had already uncovered it. Yet, even in the calm, there was a thrill of anticipation. The confrontation was coming. I just needed the right moment. She followed me through the apartment, crying, blaming everything. Me, work, stress, Evan. 1 minute sobbing, uncontrollably. The next, screaming, "You made me do this." Her emotions swung wildly like a pendulum. I stayed calm, silent, detached, letting her unravel. She pleaded, begged, and even tried manipulation. "I'll leave Evan. I'll fix everything." I watched her desperation mount. Each word she cried out, each trembling step, only reinforced the reality. I had already won. She realized I wasn't the same man she could manipulate with charm or deceit. She began pacing, hyperventilating, realizing the apartment was no longer hers. She finally understood that the life she had taken for granted, the home, the comfort, the man who carried everything, was gone. She had nowhere to go but Evan's arms, which, ironically, offered no stability at all. And as I stood back and watched her crumble, I felt a quiet, vindicated relief. I waited until she was fully dressed for another late shift. Phone buzzing incessantly with Evan's messages. Calmly, I asked her to sit. I laid everything out on the table. Photos, screenshots, timestamps, proof she couldn't deny. Her eyes went wide. Her hands shook. I can explain, she stammered. It meant nothing. I needed attention. I let her panic, let her words wash over me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply slid the lease removal papers and legal notices across the table. "You have 24 hours, I said calmly. "Pack your things and go." She collapsed into frantic denial, begging, hyperventilating. She grabbed my arms, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I'll change. I swear. I can't live without you." I didn't respond. I didn't look at her. The apartment had never felt emptier, and that's when it hit me. The power had shifted entirely. She was desperate, vulnerable, pathetic, and I was finally free of the weight I'd carried for Uri. Left the keys on the counter and walked out. Hearing her begging at the doorway, sobs echoing down the hallway. "Please, don't do this. I can't live without you," she cried, clutching at me. I didn't turn back. I didn't respond. I slid into my car and started the engine. The hum of it like a quiet anthem of freedom. She tried chasing me barefoot, her voice cracking. I made a mistake. "I'll change." I drove away without looking, feeling lighter than I had in years. The city lights blurred past, a new life opening before me. In the weeks that followed, she tried living with Evan. It didn't last. He dumped her, leaving her scrambling, dependent, lost. Meanwhile, I signed a new lease in a quiet neighborhood. Finally, reclaiming peace, control, and self-respect, I realized, in the end, that the best revenge wasn't confrontation, wasn't anger, wasn't shouting or screaming. It was walking away while they fell apart behind me. And as I watched the horizon stretch forward, I finally felt free.